Louisville will defeat Boston College if, on today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, we will identify three things that the Cardinals will need to do to take down the Eagles on Saturday afternoon. With that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode is brought to you by Underdog. Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com with the promo code Locked On and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. As always, I want to take this time to say thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. As I mentioned, we're going to be discussing the keys to the game for the Louisville Cardinals against the Boston College Eagles in the Saturday matchup up in Massachusetts. For the Cardinals, it's a matter of getting the rushing game going. Getting after Phil Jurkovec, making it a tough afternoon for him. And then finally, it is keeping the Eagles' offense one-dimensional. So we'll start out with, I think, the number one key here, and that is establishing the rushing attack, especially early on. The Cardinals, over the past couple weeks, have done a better job of, all across the board in the rushing category, just improving every single week. First 2 weeks, struggled. The outings against Syracuse and Central Florida weren't necessarily the greatest. Florida State, however, they were able to get some stuff going on the ground. And then South Florida, obviously, things were going in the Cardinals' favor very, very early on. Malik Cunningham looking like the Cunningham we saw last season multiple times last year, as a matter of fact, in that game against South Florida. The Cardinals, the number one key for the team this week, I feel like it's kind of a recurring thing that could be probably said, and that's establishing the running game early on. The Cardinals are the 14th best rushing attack in the country, averaging 224.5 yards per game. That equates out to 5.41 yards per carry. They have 10 rushing touchdowns thus far through 4 games. For the Cardinals, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory here. It is a balanced effort. 4 players with over 100 rushing yards. Malik Cunningham obviously leading the way, flirting with just under 400 yards rushing. Tyon Evans has had 215 yards in 3 total games. Jawar Jordan 150, and Travion Cooley has 109, thanks mostly in parts to that 75-yard outing against the Bulls last Saturday. In offense, since Scott Satterfield took over in 2018, since 2019, Louisville's offense has really been, set up by the run. It's a team that runs the ball, around 60 to maybe even 70 times a game. It's their identity. It's a team that plays to their strengths in the rushing department, and the passing game is kind of, piggybacking off of that, predicated off of that. So I think that for Louisville, it's a matter of continuing to establish the run, because I think it opens up a realm of possibilities for the Cardinals offense, one that's still trying to find its way, find its footing. Obviously, the 41-point outing against South Florida last Saturday will help in terms of statistics. But through the first 3 weeks, the team had the 69th ranked offense. So, there was obviously some work that needed to be done. It's really hard to, take a lot away from that South Florida matchup, but we did see some improvement. Now it's a matter of seeing that in week 5 as well. So, Louisville's offense predicated on the run, right? I've said that multiple times so far. I feel like a broken record. But even though it kind of sounds cliche, hey, it's what this team does best. Louisville's offense is at its best when it is getting what it needs to on the ground, whether that be, traditionally from a running back perspective, or from a Malik Cunningham RPO situation or design quarterback run, what have you. There's a lot of ways that Louisville utilizes that part of the offense. And I think it starts with the offensive line. One of the ways that I think that this team has shown improvement with each and every week this season is the improved play of the offensive line. They did not look good against Syracuse. They continued to look better and better with each passing game against a good Florida State defensive line. The offensive line held their own. Now, that doesn't take away some of the mental mistakes that the team made, but I think that the offensive line has been a positive for this team over the past couple weeks, and there's no really surprise here that the Cardinals once again have a top 20 rushing attack, and it all starts with the guys up front. Look, this is a veteran offensive line, one that coming into the season, was predicted to be one of the best in the conference. I think that that's why it was so shocking that the team didn't look all that good on offense in week one, and Syracuse's defense, despite being hobbled, really got into the backfield, made life tough for Malik Cunningham. Now, I know that there's been reports and rumors out there that the coaching staff tried to have him, play as more of a pocket passer in that one, and maybe that had a little bit of an effect to it. But regardless, probably a performance that the Louisville offensive line, heck, the whole team in general, probably would definitely want back. But nonetheless, that's in the past. We're on to week 5 now. The offensive line continuing to play better. The rushing attack has come along as a result. And I think with another solid outing from the guys in the trenches, there's no reason why this team shouldn't be able to extend solid play of the rushing attack. Last year, there were a series of consecutive games in which the Cardinals rushed for over 100 yards, and I could definitely see this season kind of following suit to where we're seeing the team, continuing to set the tone in the rushing attack. But I think the one thing that does, not only it does that serve to your strength, and it really can hurt defenses. And obviously, if your rushing attack is going well, that means you're moving the ball down the field, and that goes without saying. But the opportunities that it opens up with the passing game is really what interests me the most, and why I put so much emphasis on the rushing attack. Because when Malik Cunningham is at his dangerous, when Malik Cunningham is at his most dangerous level, it's when he has the ability to run the football or pass it, whether that's in RPO situations or in plays where they break down and he has to make something out of nothing. When he has to ad lib on the fly, I think that's when Malik Cunningham is the most lethal to a respective defense. Obviously, with the rushing attack going good, you're forcing defenses to commit more to the run, or at least commit to the possibility of it, and place some spies on Malik Cunningham to put more guys in the box, float more guys around the line of scrimmage, and thus in turn, maybe leaving your coverage abilities a little bit in the vulnerable sense. So I think that that this is an opportunity to where if you get that rushing attack going, then you're able to thus in turn keep defenses honest, and then as a result, you'll set up your passing game, allow those intermediate areas to, free up some, maybe take some shots deep on one-on-one opportunities with Tyler Hudson, Braden Smith, Amari Huggins, Bruce. Find some guys down the field. Over the past couple games, there have been open receivers through the middle of the field, toward the sidelines, just on the crossing routes, on the post routes, out in the flat, to where the team's passing game has started to pick up some more cohesion. And I don't think it's that big of a coincidence, nor should it come as a surprise to fans to understand that the passing game has really started to open up and started to present more opportunities to Malik Cunningham with his receivers, when that Louisville rushing attack was able to pick up and get some steam, get some momentum, and just overall be able to find its effectiveness for a team that, currently, you look at the top 15 in some of the top rushing teams in the country. Florida State is at number 13. Alabama's at number 10. Some teams that run the option are in the top 5. So in terms of overall rushing attempts, it looks like in the top 15, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like 5 of the teams in the top 15 have less attempts than the Cardinals do at 14. So, it goes to show you that, they're becoming more effective. It's not so much as it is volume as it is just efficiency and consistency. The offensive line is creating the holes, and teams are having trouble with guarding Malik Cunningham and then devising game plans for Tyon Evans, Travion Cooley, Jawar Jordan. We talked about why it's so big of an advantage to have so many different guys on this team in the rushing category that can hurt you, for a defense to try to plan for, because for a defensive coordinator, it's like, okay, if you plan for Malik Cunningham, then yeah, you've got Tyon Evans that can go for over 100 yards on any given game. Jawar Jordan, Travion Cooley is, without injury now. And then you talk about Jalen Mitchell, who's dealt with some injuries. He only has 4 carries on the season. So that's another player that you have to watch for as well. So getting that rushing attack going early is my number one key to the game for the Cardinals, and I think it could be a key indicator when it comes to determining if this Louisville Cardinals team can end up winning this game, and that's going to be a big factor in this one. And for a game that is possibly going to be with a rainy forecast, muddying the field could definitely play into the Cardinals' advantage. So I want to kind of switch now to the defensive side of the ball, where I think that the main key for the defense is getting into the Boston College backfield and putting pressure on Phil Jurkovec. We're going to explain just why that is here in just a second after we talk about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, Underdog Fantasy. The episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up the college football season. It's a very interesting way to play college football fantasy. Essentially, it's available in over 30 states, easy to play. Pick between 2 to 5 players across any team, not just for the Cardinals, and decide if they'll finish higher or lower. Look at the Malik Cunningham numbers on UnderdogFantasy.com. A couple that I like are Drake May, higher than 265.5 passing yards against Virginia Tech. And even though UNC has a secondary that has struggled, I think that Grant Wells under 220.5 is an interesting one to take. So go to Underdog and make your own selections. It's one of the easiest fantasy to play games out there, and you can win cold hard cash in a single game. Sign up with the promo code Locked On. That's all one word, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Deposit $100, get $100 for free. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or Google Play. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On. Get in on the college football pick'em action today. So defensively for the Louisville Cardinals, the best performance so far of the season outside of that game against Central Florida came against South Florida in the Week 4 victory. Now you're looking to go up against an offense that is trending in the wrong direction, one that just got beat by 30 points against the Florida State Seminoles last week, and you are looking to take advantage of an offensive line that simply just has not been good. The Cardinals have been very, very solid in terms of getting after opposing quarterbacks, a lot more solid than last season. So far, they have recorded 13 sacks. They also have, a plethora of tackles for loss. Over and over, you're seeing guys like Yaya Diaby, Yasir Abdullah, Monty Montgomery, Ashton Gelati, who didn't even play against South Florida due to injury. These guys are having some success in, getting into the opposing backfield, making it tough for opposing quarterbacks and running backs as well. And this is an opportunity for Louisville to really, really do something in the line of scrimmage, not only on the offensive line side of things, but on the defensive line as well. Boston College as a team is 126th out of 131st in the country in sacks allowed per game, actually total sacks, I should say. They have allowed 15 in the first 4 games. That has equated to a total of 101 sack yards, and averaging out 3.75 sacks per game. So overall here, I think that it's going to be an instance to where Louisville's defense is going to have a solid opportunity in front of them, right? I mean, this is a game that it's mainly a passing offense. The only Power Five teams that rank below Boston College. Actually, the only teams that rank below Boston College in sacks allowed are Kentucky, Marshall, Stanford, Akron, and Colorado State. Now, whether that be some youth on the offensive line, guys just not playing well. I know that this is a unit that's dealt with a handful of unfortunate injuries. Some guys recently injured, some guys trying to come back from injury, but nonetheless, Jeff Hafley's squad has not done a good job of protecting Phil Jurkovec so far this season. So I think that the second key to the game for the Louisville Cardinals, the top key for the Louisville defense, is making life difficult for the Boston College signal caller. Not only is it a matter of getting to him, whether that equates to getting sacks. Now, obviously, getting sacks is a big aspect of what I think that this key to the game should be. But also, at the very least, just speeding up Jurkovec's reads, making him uncomfortable when it comes to releasing the football, making him release the football a lot quicker than he's planning to, forcing him to make quicker decisions and maybe being more prone to turning the football over. And on the other side of things, getting into the opposing backfield for Boston College rushing attack. We're going to talk about it. That has, for lack of better terms, just has not been good. Let's just leave it at that. But Yaya Diaby was a player that I think is the key player to watch on the defense here. I think that he could have a solid afternoon. I haven't heard of the status of Ashton Gelati. I know that he missed last week against South Florida. I haven't heard either way. Obviously, it seems like on Saturday we'll know more. I apologize if we already know if he's playing or not. I haven't heard. I've actually been kind of out of commission for a sales conference, so I do apologize. But this is a great opportunity for Louisville's defense to continue that momentum after allowing only 3 points to South Florida. Now, granted, I think that, assuming the weather holds up, Jurkovec is a respectable passer, and they have one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the conference in Zay Flowers, and it's going to be a bigger challenge to guard Boston College than South Florida, in my opinion. But getting after the quarterback here, taking advantage of an offensive line that has struggled throughout this season, looked very, very just uncomfortable against a Florida State defensive line. Yes, they're good, but they were without Jared Verse, without some other key players on that defensive line as well. And I think that this is a good game for Yasir Abdullah, Yaya Diaby, maybe Ashton Gelati, Monty Montgomery, so on and so forth, to maybe record multiple individual sacks in this one. So that for me is the second key to the game. It is taking advantage of a Boston College offensive line that has not been good this season so far, and forcing Boston College into third and long situations, forcing turnovers, and just getting Jeff Hafley's offense out of rhythm. One of the reasons why that is so key is that this is a one-dimensional offense. And the third key to the game, in my opinion, needs to be keeping the Boston College offense one-dimensional. So, and we're going to talk about that here. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here looking at this pen and how the pen cap is completely bent back. That shows you my attention span that I'm having during this podcast episode, so I do apologize there. But yeah, keeping the Boston College offense one-dimensional. Before we discuss that, I want to say thank you again for making Locked On the Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On the Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, including YouTube and WHAS 11+, 5 days a week. Your team every day. Like I mentioned, WHAS 11 Plus is carrying all of the Locked On the Louisville content. You can go to WHAS11.com, go to the sports section, and see all of the Locked On the Louisville podcast episodes. You can watch them on that streaming service and also on YouTube. Be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, drop a comment, drop your thoughts on the episode, your thoughts on the topic at hand, so on and so forth. So, but before we end the episode, we're going to talk about the third key to the game. The Louisville College The Louisville College. Oh my goodness. The Louisville defense needs to keep the Boston College offense one-dimensional. The Eagles have one of the worst rushing attacks in the country. Actually, I just completely. Okay, there we go. They have the worst rushing attack in the Power 5, 128th out of 131. They are tied for the worst rushing, or the 128th worst rushing attack in the country. 239 rushing yards to date. That is 59.8 per contest and a measly 1.98 yards per rush. And that definitely has to be one of the key aspects of why this Boston College offense has struggled so far. And in turn, one of the reasons why this team is 1-3 going into week 5 and up for contention and maybe one of the worst teams in the ACC so far. And it's a matter of keeping this offense one-dimensional. If you're the Louisville defense here, you want to handle business. You know, statistics are great to analyze, but you still have to handle business. Just because they've been bad in the past rushing the football, you have to make sure that that continues in week 5. That's why, getting into the Boston College backfield, continuing to record those tackles for loss, continuing to, make it tough for opposing offenses to run the football. Yes, this is a Louisville defense that through the first couple of weeks, weeks 1 and 2, it was tough to, stop the run for the Louisville defense. They did a little bit better against Florida State, and then, they held South Florida to, I think, under 50 yards rushing for an option offense. So that was pretty impressive, despite despite South Florida not being that good of a team. Pat Garwo leads the way, 159 rushing yards. He's averaging 3.2 yards per carry. But outside of that, nobody has over 50 yards. Now, I will say that Phil Jurkovec's rushing yards so far it's 31 carries for negative 64 yards. So a lot of that's accounting sack yards into that as well. So it does, it does, bode a mention that some of those rushing numbers have been skewed maybe a little bit, but even then, the yards per carry number is something else that really plays into the factor here. And what that does is it forces Boston College to, remain one-dimensional. And if you take away the rushing attack, I think that you are able to, bring the house on blitzes, bring some more guys off the edge, try to put some more pressure on Jurkovec as a pocket passer. And what that does in turn is it puts more pressure on the passing attack. It essentially, I think it's pretty straightforward here on why that this would be a big advantage if you take away the passing attack. Now, obviously, it's not going to be like South Florida where if you take away the rush, then, the team's really going to struggle because Boston College is a passing team. But if you take away the rush, you're taking away one of the aspects of the game that you have to focus on. And then you can kind of predicate your defensive scheme, along the lines of preparing for, just predominantly the passing attack. So pretty straightforward in my opinion. It's a matter of handling business, just doing what you have to do to put Boston College in uncomfortable situations, getting them off the field early, making them go 3 and out, third and long situations to where they have to pick up some big time yards to get first downs. And maybe they will here and there, but continually doing so definitely could bode well for the Louisville chances in this game against Boston College. So overall, it's a matter of establishing the rushing attack, taking advantage of an offensive line that has not played all that well, and keeping the Boston College offense one-dimensional. As I mentioned, there will be another episode today. It will probably be a special recruiting episode where we'll talk about some new offers and dive into the weekly mailbag. Before we get out here, I want to say thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder to check out the Locked On ACC podcast hosted by Candace Cooper. No better way to check out that episode than, or those episodes than, sorry, I'm sitting here looking at it at an alert that came across the phone. No better way to check out the conference content than checking out those episodes on all streaming services. Once again, want to say that it's our thoughts go out to those affected by the hurricane over the past week. We extend our thoughts to those that are dealing with property damage, loss of life, health issues, all of the things that have come with the hurricane, and those that are affected in the South Florida area along the coast, those that have family that have been affected. Our thoughts go out to you all. Wish the very best. If you can, if you're listening to this, any help matters. I know sometimes in these situations it seems like there's not much you can do, but there are some, government websites that offer opportunities to help, whether that be financially or even volunteer work. I know, sometimes that's not feasible, but you never know how even a little can definitely go a long way. So we'll be on here for another episode to finish the month. Obviously, the Cardinals in action up in Boston tomorrow. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here very shortly.